how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime, and I was super excited because I had just got my license, but my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok, and she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring it out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was near close. So I go in, and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is." So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, "Yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her?" And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. Part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter, and I was like, "I'm going to go tell a Target employee." And she was like, "No, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place." And she was like, "Will you help me check the parking lot because I don't know if she left." She was like, "I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, "Okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car?" And she was like, "No, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, "I think someone's under my car." And she was like, "What? No, it's probably just the shadow." And I'm like, "No, there's someone under my car." So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.
Story time about how I caught my husband cheating on me with our very young nanny. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. I'm 45 years old and my husband is 10 years younger than me. When we first got married, my friends kept telling me not to marry someone so much younger. They told me that he would eventually cheat and leave me for someone younger. I refused to believe this hope because my husband and I really loved each other. Or at least I thought. We met at a party a few years ago and he made the first move right away. He asked me out on a date and a few weeks later we became boyfriend and girlfriend. A few years after that we got married, and after years of trying, we finally got pregnant and had twins. They are both 2 years old now. My husband's job requires him to travel a lot. I own a really big salon and business is good, so we have a pretty good life and are able to afford a lot of things for our kids. Since my husband travels, my schedule has to be really flexible. I take care of the kids in the morning and then I go off to work, leaving them with the nanny. Our first nanny was a lot older and she had lots of experience, but she unexpectedly quit on us, so we had to find another one. We decided to look for one of those nanny agencies. We ended up interviewing about 5 nannies, but my husband was set on one of them, and she was the youngest out of all of them, 18. Oh yeah, and the most attractive too. My husband told me that maybe we should try someone younger so that the kids can have fun, and I said yes. The nanny would cover for me for about 4 hours a day when I was at work. Her and I started to get along really well. She would tell me about her boy troubles and I would give her advice. Part 2 is up. Story 2 of how I caught my husband cheating on me with our very young nanny. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. The nanny and I started to become really good friends. I even started telling her about the problems I was having with my husband. Little did I know that she was the problem. Like I said in part 1, my husband travels a lot. This is what we would usually fight about. You see, it was actually really easy for him to travel less. All he had to do was pick a different region for his job. Instead of a 6-hour flight, it could have been a 2-hour trip. His excuse was that he would get paid less. When I was telling the nanny about our issues, she told me that I should just let it go and let my husband have his freedom. But the way she said it really bothered me. I ended the conversation and told her that she could go home. When my husband came home, I mentioned to him what the nanny said. I told him that I didn't like the way she told me that I needed to give him his freedom. He started to laugh and said, "She's just a young girl. She's probably just saying what she thinks you need to hear." I decided to listen to my husband and I let it go. A week later, the nanny comes over to take care of the kids. By the way, as soon as she would come to my house, I would serve her a plate of food or make her anything she wanted before I left to work. As she sat down to eat, I could see her messages on her phone, and the name on the messages was the same as my husband's. I asked her why she was messaging my husband and she quickly put her phone in her purse. She didn't even know what to say. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I caught my husband cheating on me with our very young nanny. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. When I asked her why she was messaging my husband on her phone, she did not know what to say. I asked her if she was okay. Then she replies with, I just needed some advice for my car. She was so nervous. I asked her to pull out her phone and give it to me. That's when she said no and started putting up a fight. She told me I had no right to check her phone, but I didn't believe her. I ripped her purse from her hands and grabbed the phone. Before I even have a chance to look at the messages, she starts calling me fat and old, and that my husband is planning to leave me for her. Honestly, what she was saying didn't faze me because my goal was to look at the messages. And she was pretty much right. In the messages, my husband promised her to leave me for her, and that he was sick of me and the kids. I begin to scroll up and see all of the pictures that they sent each other. You can imagine what they were. By the way, the nanny was only a day from turning 18. Yep. Out of nowhere, she starts breaking plates and glasses and verbally abusing me. She even said that if I didn't leave him alone, that something bad would happen to me. I grabbed her by the arm and threw her out of the house. But I kept her phone, so I called my husband from the phone. When he hears my voice, he hangs up the phone. When he finally got home, we got into a 6-hour fight. I made him leave the house, but apparently the nanny went crazy. She started stalking him and he had to get a restraining order against her. Serves him right. Her parents are threatening to press charges. I don't want my kids to grow up without a father, but I don't want to get back with him. What should I do?
This is how you know I married my ride or die, because this weekend somebody almost made me forget I was pregnant. We're at a family event. There's about 200 people there. I'm in charge of coordinating the things that happened in the reception. I'm not gonna go into detail because she's not even worth my breath, but we were in the corner of this venue and she starts screaming at me, going off, making a scene, bro. This is a family event. Brain cells gone, etiquette gone, like no thought in her brain, right? My hormones rushing, the head in me trying to come out. Like, I was like, bro, don't try me. And from a mile away, my man sees what is going on, comes, swoops in like Paw Patrol to save the day, gets in front of me and was like, yeah, what's the issue? What's going on? To defend me. Not even have to call him. Like, he just knew. Like, I love him.
Am I wrong for refusing to let my husband's infertile friend name our son? My husband's 33 male best friend, Will, 37 male, is infertile. He got divorced 2 times because of it, and because he lied and hid his infertility. And his life hasn't been the same the day he was told he can't have kids. He has always had a soft spot for children, and when he found out that my husband and I were expecting, he was so thrilled and started buying us gifts and decor pieces that he made from his woodwork for the baby. My husband thinks that those are all nice gestures, but I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable, especially with how much he keeps mentioning the baby. A few days ago, my husband and I found the gender of the baby. The moment we told Will, he started calling the baby a random name he picked and was going to give to his baby if he wasn't infertile. He then started begging us to use this name, and my husband said it was a done deal. I refused, but my husband called me heartless and asked me to do this one small, nice gesture for his struggling friend to give him closure and honor him after all the things he has done for us. I flipped and said, it's my baby, not his. Will heard this and left immediately. My husband yelled at me, saying it's his baby too, and my behavior towards Will was aberrant. He left after him and didn't come back till the next morning. He kept saying the same thing and pressuring me to agree on the name, but I refused.